You wrote a very interesting paper the other day about was there going to be some elongated AIFM limbo period, which over the weekend we were told there was. I mean, the analysis that Rory gave us about the EU's AIFM directive is horrifyingly clear, and I still don't understand it. We don't know what's going to happen. So what's going to happen with the EU domiciles, we don't know. It is possible that if Ricardo's worst picture comes through and Rory's worst picture comes through, then I think it was Tim Geithner who threatened isolationism was going to be the result. And I think that's probably quite possible, that in the end it might just not be worth the effort. Why, if I've got X million in Europe, do I need to go to America and go through all that hassle? I've got everybody outside America and everybody outside Europe I can sell to, either out of Europe or out of America. So why do I need to bother with the other ones? They're all a bunch of jerks anyway. Whether you're an American talking about Europe or European talking about American. And basically we're only discussing the regulators here, not the population.
Recently, over the recent months, things like liquidity, and I think whilst regulation is driving a lot of the investor thing, looking for liquidity, UCITS requiring at least fortnightly liquidity seems a very attractive proposition, and it's driving interest in it. However, the reality for many of the alternative strategies is liquidity on a fortnightly basis is not achievable. So how do you sort of marry up those two competing drivers? So we have certainly seen some interest around UCITS through liquidity. The second area investors have been looking for is around security, and there is a perceived value in a more structured regulatory framework within the EU, and that's driving it there. I haven't seen a tsunami of people walking out of Cayman and moving to Dublin, Luxembourg, but what I have seen is people who would have only looked at Cayman, and when they're setting up a fund, actually evaluating more in different centres.
Hedge fund managers setting up UCITS. My own view of that is A, it's too soon, and B, it's for the majority of them it's going to be a waste of time. I mean, if you're somebody like, I can't remember whether it was Marshall Wace or Brevin Howard who set up a UCITS and lobbed 300 million in from their ordinary funds, then okay, it's going to work. But UCITS are very much more expensive, noticeably more expensive, should I say, than a QIF, a PIF, or a SIF, depending on whether you're in Ireland, Luxembourg, or Malta, or a Cayman fund, to set up, and they're very much more expensive to operate annually. So if you happen to have a Cayman Island fund that you're happily selling to the Far East, you're happily selling to the BRIC countries and the Middle East, the performance on that fund is going to outshine the performance on your UCITS. UCITS being set up in Ireland, we've seen a lot being set up in Luxembourg, and we're seeing a few being set up in Malta, but that's in proportion to the size of the centres. It seems logical that if a manager wishes to set up now and move now, that he should set up a fund in Europe. That seems the sensible thing to do if you want to attack the European market. It may well be that when in 9 months, 18 months, 3 years, or ever, we find out what the regulations are with AIFM, that what you did was a mistake. So I would suggest you only do it when you have to, or when you know what the result is going to be. There will be more work in Europe. There will definitely be an expansion of the hedge fund business in Europe as a result. And I would say that the objective of the EU in this is not purely to attack hedge funds, it's to control everybody who's got any money so they know where it is.
Whilst, yes, Europe is a big enough market that you can survive quite well within it, and the US is the same, the lack of global view around regulation that marries up what does China want out of a European domicile fund, is there synergies that can be driven between US and European regulation, and not taking a global view is a threat to the European markets. And I also think convergence of traditional and alternative managers really is a trend we'll see. It's very difficult to determine at times what's a traditional manager, what's an alternative, if they're doing an absolute return fund or something. But we as an industry create a number of different barriers, you know, different systems, different audit requirements, different regulators, you know, different methods of going about things. Those are false barriers that are actually going to inhibit the growth overall. And as I say, we are agnostic, but I think there's a much more work on globality and convergence we could do to create a bigger pot for everybody, rather than look at it from a domicile perspective. Not really put anyone off the whole, because of the cost base. In fact, if it is euro cost, it should be going.
Yeah, I mean, from a cost point of view, I agree. And the euro collapses, then administrators will flood to, I mean, in theory, they should flood from the Caymans to Europe, because, as you said, you know, from our point of view, for the first 10 years of our life, we were looking at the euro practically below the dollar. I think maybe, certainly below the pound. I mean, it was marvellous. And then you had this rise up to wherever the hell the euro got to, and now it's getting back to somewhere vaguely acceptable. But the further it goes down, the happier I am. And I don't really mind whether it's a gift given by Greeks or whatever that phrase is. But, I'm very happy to have it go down. And it suits a business being run, as you said, with dollar income in a euro basis.